Welcome to the deep dive. We take a stack of complex sources, we pull out the core insights, and we try to give you the knowledge you need without all the overload. Today, we're getting into something that feels incredibly timely. We're focusing on how leaders, really in any field, can sustain their integrity and their effectiveness over, the long haul.
That's right.
We've been looking at this really powerful collection of research, and while a lot of it started in the context of ministry leadership, the principles are they're universal. I mean, if you lead a tech team or you run a nonprofit, the question is really the same.
It is. How do you not burn out?
How do you prevent that? Or moral failure, decades into a career.
Right. And our mission today is to really unpack what one piece of research called the uncomfortable truth. And it's this discovery that so many successful people make, which is that failure, career failure for really gifted people, it almost never happens because they lose their talent.
Or they lose an opportunity.
Exactly. It happens when their personal formation, their inner growth just stops.
Wow. I can feel the weight of that. So you're saying the sabotage is completely internal. We spent all these years focused on the outside, the next promotion, the next degree. But what is this core problem then that starts to eat away at even the most successful leader?
It's the creeping poison of what the sources call the arrival mentality.
The arrival mentality.
Yeah, it's this subtle, almost unspoken assumption that because you've got the title or you've hit a certain level of success, that your need for internal growth has just diminished. You think you're done. You've arrived.
So, okay, the thought process shifts. Instead of thinking, I am being shaped by this challenge, it becomes something like, I am now capable of managing this position.
Exactly. You confuse anointing with arrival. Or you confuse the mission with your own mastery of it. And your goal shifts from, deep personal transformation to just external performance management.
Right.
And the really radical truth that these sources are proposing is this. Readiness is not a destination. It's not a box you check. It is a capacity that has to be deepened continuously over a lifetime. It's a pursuit, not a status.
Okay, let's dig into this myth of arrival. Because from the outside, a leader can look like they're performing brilliantly for years, right? Even after this internal rot has started. So how does it actually impact their behavior right away?
Well, the first thing to go is a quiet erosion of two key things: accountability and dependence.
Okay.
So when you think you've arrived, you subconsciously narrow the circle of people who can give you challenging feedback. You're the expert now, so you're much less likely to seek out correction.
That makes so much sense. I mean, who's qualified to hold the arrived person accountable? Accountability suddenly feels optional.
Precisely. And your reliance on past experience starts to replace any reliance on active current learning or, as these sources frame it, dependence on God. Your early passion creates this illusion that all the hard work of internal growth is behind you.
And that's the danger zone.
That's the danger zone. That's when leaders plateau, they drift, and most critically, they just stop being teachable. They stop learning long before anyone on the outside notices that they've become brittle.
And if you connect that to today's world, with the accelerated change, the volatility, why is this so urgent right now for someone, say, leading a big company?
Because the shelf life of just pure technical competence is shrinking so fast. I mean, your MBA skills from 15 years ago are not enough to navigate today's world.
Right.
Technical knowledge is, of course, it's essential, but it's no longer sufficient for decades of leadership. The thing that sustains you is a resilient posture. It's this ongoing internal openness to being refined and renewed. That's what lets you pivot and endure failure without just dissolving.
This leads us right into what feels like the central lever of this whole deep dive. The huge difference between preparation and formation. We confuse them all the time.
This is the absolute pivot point for any learner, for any professional. We have to get really clear on the definitions here. So, preparation. It's the visible stuff, it's measurable, and it equips you for performance. Think of it like your resume. Credentials, degrees, skills, all those quantifiable metrics like department growth or sales numbers.
It's society rewards. It's tangible.
Exactly. It's marketable. Yeah. But then you have formation.
And what's that?
Formation is invisible. It's relational. And it equips you for perseverance, for spiritual resilience. We're talking about character traits, humility, internal composure, dependence, moral imagination. You can't rush formation. It doesn't show up on a quarterly report. It's the quality of your internal architecture.
Okay, so if preparation is the resume, and formation is the hard drive. How does this play out when things go wrong?
The danger is the inversion. It's when preparation just vastly outpaces formation.
Yeah.
So you get a leader who is highly capable, articulate, brilliant, a fantastic performer under ideal conditions. But internally, they are brittle. And so when the market collapses or an ethical line gets blurry or just personal pressure mounts, their lack of formation, that internal insecurity or rigidity, it causes catastrophic failure.
The sources have some really powerful historical examples of this. They bring up King Saul, competent, charismatic, led effectively at the start.
Oh, Saul was highly prepared for the job. But his formation was so thin, that lack of inner substance led to insecurity, to impulsivity, and ultimately this paranoia that just completely undermined his whole reign. His preparation only gave him a bigger platform for his failure.
And then in contrast, you have someone like Moses, trained in the courts of Egypt, the highest education of his time. I mean, amazing preparation.
Unbelievable preparation. But the sources remind us his true readiness was forged in the wilderness for 40 years.
40 years.
That's the key. The external training gave him the skills, but the wilderness gave him the character, the humility, the dependence he needed to lead under just grueling pressure. The inner work of formation outlasted the external knowledge.
So let's really focus on that inner work. The sources keep coming back to two defining traits of any enduring leader: deep teachability and radical dependence.
Right. And teachability is so often confused with weakness, isn't it? Especially in these high-stakes cultures where confidence is everything.
Of course.
But the research is clear. Teachability is a sign of spiritual maturity. And it's not about needing a mentor for technical skills. It's about being profoundly receptive to uncomfortable truth.
The wise listen to advice, right? That's ancient wisdom. So what happens when a leader just resists correction?
They signal closure, not confidence. When a leader gets defensive, they're revealing that their identity has become completely tied up in their expertise or their reputation. So if their idea is challenged, they feel personally threatened. That's what one source calls defensive maturity.
And real wisdom.
Real wisdom allows for correction because your identity is anchored somewhere else. It's not in being the smartest person in the room.
Okay, let's shift to that second characteristic. Dependence. I mean, in our pull yourself up by your bootstraps culture, dependence sounds like the absolute opposite of what a leader should be.
And that's where the sources introduce this idea of the kingdom inversion. Dependence is the true marker of maturity, not weakness. It's simply aligning with reality. It's recognizing that you do not have infinite capacity, infinite wisdom, or infinite stamina.
It's admitting the burden of leadership is just too heavy to carry all by yourself.
Exactly. This belief in independence, which our culture celebrates, it inevitably leads to pride, to rigidity, to burnout, because the leader is trying to shoulder the entire load. Dependence, the kind modeled by figures who said things like, I can do nothing by myself, that sustains influence because the power is seen as God-originated, not self-generated.
Right.
And that posture allows a leader to persevere without being crushed by the weight of it all.
And this isn't a quick fix. This is a lifelong process. The formation never, ever pauses. The Apostle Paul said it so well, right? He framed his life as someone still pressing on, not as someone who had already arrived.
That's theological clarity, not false humility. And the sources break this lifelong journey down into 3 distinct seasons that pretty much every professional is going to encounter, whether they run a charity or a hedge fund.
Okay, so the first season, obscurity or waiting. We usually see these times as delays or just wasted time.
But these sources frame obscurity as formative favor. It's the season where your character is built precisely because no one is watching. Visibility teaches you how to perform. Obscurity teaches you humility, patience, obedience.
These are the qualities that stop success from ruining you later on.
They are. Think of David running from Saul for years, or Jesus working in a carpenter shop. Those weren't footnotes in their stories. They were the essential foundation.
And then you hit the next season, fruitfulness or success. And paradoxically, this is presented as the biggest test of all. Why is that?
Because success dulls your vigilance. When the affirmation is pouring in, when the metrics are all green, when everyone thinks you're brilliant, it takes immense intentionality to stay humble and attentive.
The temptation is to let affirmation replace attentiveness.
Precisely. The research is so clear on this. Leaders have to actively guard against mistaking the affirmation of people for the attestation of God. King Solomon is the prime example. Unparalleled wisdom and success, but his heart drifted because he stopped stewarding his inner life when his external success was at its absolute peak.
And the last season, failure and disappointment. the really painful ones. Loss, unmet expectations, maybe even public scandal.
And these are seen as instruments of formation. The sources don't treat failure as disqualifying, but as a crucible. Loss forces you into dependence. It brutally clarifies your motivation. When everything external is stripped away, you have to confront why you're doing what you're doing.
Like Peter's denial.
Exactly. His failure wasn't the end of his calling. It was the mechanism that broke his self-reliance. It refined him. Failure doesn't have to eliminate a leader. It refines the kind of leader they will become.
Okay, so we have this framework. Preparation is the skill, formation is the stamina, arrival is the myth. So what does this mean for the person listening right now? We need some concrete, actionable steps.
Yes, let's get practical. The first tool the sources suggest is a powerful reflective exercise, spiritual lifeline mapping.
That sounds incredibly useful. How practically does someone do that?
The point is discernment, not just, nostalgia. You literally chart the high points, low points, and major transitions of your professional and personal life. For a business leader, this could be charting your 5 biggest career pivots, your 3 biggest ethical challenges, and the moment you felt closest to burnout.
And what are you looking for in that chart?
You're looking for patterns, persistent struggles, recurring dynamics. Where have you repeatedly failed because of the same character flaw? What key lessons did you learn in obscurity that you totally forgot about during success? Mapping helps you see the blueprint of how your character has been shaped.
That moves us right into addressing that defensiveness we talked about. The sources also recommends a teachability self-assessment. How does that work?
This is a diagnostic tool. It's designed to get past that defensive maturity and shine a light on your blind spots. And it requires you to ask very specific, scenario-based questions.
Not just, am I humble?
No, not at all. You ask, when my direct report offers a contradictory opinion in a public meeting, is my immediate internal response curiosity, or is it irritation? Or how do I react internally when a huge budget cut forces me to change a strategy that I championed?
Those are tough operational questions. They expose the truth.
They are. And the most crucial step with this assessment is inviting a trusted peer or a spiritual director into the process. You can't self-diagnose your own blind spots. Formation is deeply personal, but it cannot happen in isolation. Isolation is the greatest friend of the arrival mentality.
And finally, we have to come back to the engine room of all of this. The practices the sources call spiritual disciplines.
Yes, but we have to recontextualize them. They can't just be routine maintenance, a checklist to earn points or keep your job. They had to be practiced as channels of profound transformation.
So the focus has to shift entirely.
Completely. You're not aiming for performance reading a certain number of verses or whatever. You're aiming for encounter. Are these habits creating space for my character to be shaped by something beyond my own ambition? If they stop leading to humility and patience and love, they've just become duty without dependence. And for sustaining a leader, they're worthless.
That is such a critical distinction. So if we pull all this together, the myth of arrival, the preparation versus formation divide, teachability, the practical tools, what is the central thesis you want someone to walk away with?
That finishing well is rarely dramatic. It's not one grand achievement. It's the cumulative result of daily obedience, sustained humility, and an enduring openness. The true measure of maturity isn't how far you've come. It's your continued responsiveness to learning and to challenge. True arrival just means you've stopped walking.
That's a profound thought. The moment you believe I am now ready, that's often the exact starting point of the internal drift. Not because being ready is bad, but because the belief in finality is so dangerous.
Right. And this reframes the whole nature of what we call success. If leadership isn't a project to complete, but a legacy to steward, then formation isn't a prerequisite you checked off years ago, it is the work itself. So the question becomes, what new areas of surrender or learning or risk might you need to embrace today if you assume you're still in the wilderness and God is still forming you?